It's a beautiful little city, all of its own, just a few miles north of Seattle, and that's Edmonds, of course. And if you live there, you know where you get all your news. You get all your news at MyEdmondsNews. Teresa Wippel with us right here on Community Blog TV. Teresa, welcome back.
Thank you, Stan.
MyEdmondsNews is a very, very busy publication.
Yes, it is.
As I said before, I think last month, it's good that you have a staff of 100 people running around getting all your news for you.
Just me.
And again, myedmondsnews.com, that's the place to go. And okay, so let's go and let's talk about some of the news that's been there. First off, something I don't know that I have ever seen in My Edmonds News. It was a crime story. Police nabbed 2 additional suspects in a string of downtown Edmonds burglaries. And here's something from the story. An Edmonds man was arrested April 28th on burglary charges. He provided information that led police to 2 other suspects in a series of downtown Edmonds residential burglaries, and both men were arrested last week. The reason I bring this up, not to talk about, well, there's crime in Edmonds too, but instead is how the people react to crime stories.
Well, I think that there's an acknowledgement that we have had some burglary issues in Edmonds, and probably partially because of the economy. I would guess there's some of that going on. You know, I think what I've heard from folks is that they're very grateful that we have a police department that's so responsive and usually gets their guys. I mean, they seem to manage to capture the suspects, at least for what I can tell, on a regular basis. And there's been a real appreciation of the police's ability to kind of stay on top of it.
So was there like a rash of, and rash is you know, a word that I use living in the big part of the city.
Yeah, yeah, there really was. There was a string of burglaries that were going on, and I think actually it's happened in a couple different areas of town over the last several months, and they have managed to find the perpetrators, but that doesn't mean it won't happen again. I mean, it seems to be societal at this point with the economy. So
in general, are the people of Edmonds supportive of the police?
They are, yeah, they really are. I mean, I think there's always people who, in fact, I think the joke is that Edmonds has so many police, and that's mainly because they're very much into street presence and being around the community, because it's such a small town feel.
Down when I
yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of them on the street. They do a very intensive DUI effort. Like for, you know, a lot of the downtown restaurants, they really do pay attention to people who are driving while intoxicated. They make a lot of arrests there as well.
Look, when I'm driving to the ferry, I obey the traffic signs because it's like, whoa.
They do. They sit right on the side of that road that goes down to the ferry terminal. If you're not watching, you can easily get a ticket.
Let's go to one of my favorite guys. He's a friend of mine, and he is Citizen Harry. And this is kind of the start of a pretty big deal, it seems. And the article that he wrote, his last one was Questions and Answers about a Possible Property Tax Levy, and this was before what happened at City Council. Question number 2, interesting. He said, what's the deal with the city's accounting? And Harry's response was, there seems to be little doubt that the financial statements are for the most part accurate. No worries about misappropriated funds or major discrepancies in fund balances. The issue is that the reports made to the council are not in a format that is easy for them to understand. Okay, I read that answer, and I was wondering to myself, is that just a nice way of saying that they're not very smart?
Well, I will say, and I'm not trying to be too politically careful here. I think it's really the truth. There is one council member in particular, Diane Buckness, who has been very, very clear for about a year and a half now since she was appointed to the council. I guess it's been about a year. She wants the format of the reports to be much clearer than they are now. She believes that there's no question that it should be that way, and in fact, she had passed an ordinance. Put an ordinance through the council insisting that these reports be posted on a regular basis on the city website and in a format that people can understand. So she's very much committed to that. And you know, the truth is that I think there are a lot of people who are tired of hearing her say that, and that was actually why Harry had written the column, I believe, because she tends to make that an issue that is more important than all else to her. And sometimes people get a little tired of hearing it. But you know, she's committed to it, and she keeps talking about it.
Well, okay. So if you've got a council member, and it's one of 7, right? you've got a council member who says, I can't understand the reports.
Right.
Would she not just go into the comptroller's office and say, help me?
Well, that's been part of the issue. We had a finance director that actually, I don't remember if we talked about this earlier, but he resigned and went to a different city, and it was like oil and water between him and this council member and another council member. They did not get along at all, to the point where he actually filed a lawsuit against them claiming possible harassment. It was not a good situation, and it was probably a good thing that he left, because I'm not sure if it ever would have been resolved. But so she says she tried to get explanations and to get better reports. He said that he provided everything he needed to provide, and she was being difficult, and so it was just a stalemate. And you know, hopefully they're now on the search for a new finance director, and the hope is that that'll be resolved with a new person.
All right. All right, let's go on then in another part of the column that Citizen Harry wrote. It says, does the city need more money for operations or for capital projects? The answer, both. The city currently has no money to spend to replace the surface of any roads outside of repair work. The city is also deferring maintenance on its infrastructure and parks to the tune of about $1 million a year. It's sort of like the old Fram oil filter commercial, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And you know, I have watched cities across the country. I've watched a school system in New York City have incredible bills because they deferred and deferred and deferred infrastructure maintenance.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, that's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing, and for us in Edmonds, the biggest glaring problem is our streets. We have a schedule of street overlays right now that are on an 85-year cycle, which means that once every 85 years, the way the budget stands now, we can afford to replace our streets.
Once every 85 years?
And that's totally unacceptable.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody knows that. But you know, and this gets into a bigger question, which is part of the debate that's going on right now at the City Council. It's going to be a debate when our 4 council members who are up for re-election start their debates, and the mayor, who is also up for re-election. The issue of is, do we have a revenue problem or do we have an expense problem? You know, some people say one or the other, some people say both, but the problem is that we don't have money in our budget right now to fund the streets and other maintenance, parks maintenance. We have playground equipment that's unsafe. I mean, there's some things that need to be fixed, and that's why they've talked about putting a levy on the ballot, but there are people who have said very adamantly, you need to look at things like employee labor expenses and other things like that before we're going to talk about passing a levy. So it's going to be a subject of debate for quite some time.
Another thing that people will say about all governments is that there's a priorities question too.
Yes.
And so maybe that's an expense question. I'm not sure. But I suspect that the people in Edmonds are going to definitely weigh in on the priorities issues.
They will. It really depends on, number one, if the council can get enough votes among themselves to put the levy on the ballot, especially because they've got 4 people up for 5, including the mayor, up for re-election. And then if they do, what form it will take. Will they stick with a very austere kind of proposal, minimal just streets? Will they add some other things onto it? And what is the mood of the voters? I think we've seen nationally and locally that people are not very generous right now. Yeah,
that's for sure. Well, all right, let's go on then. Here is a column. It's back to the drawing board for Edmonds Council after the levy plan was rejected. And in the column itself, it says, the problem was that council members Adrian Fraley-Manillas and Michael Plunkett were absent at last week's meeting, and neither of them thought too kindly of the vote taken last week without having a chance to provide their input. What was that all about?
Yeah. This was the weirdest thing. The way it worked was 2 council meetings ago, one of the council members had proposed a $700,000 streets-only levy idea. The council decided to table that motion, didn't vote on it. The next meeting, there were 2 council members absent, those 2 that are mentioned in the article. The council member who had originally, and they had gone off and started talking about other types of levy ideas. And then all of a sudden, this council member who had proposed the original motion the week before said, oh, by the way, whatever happened to that other motion we talked about? And they went and looked through the records, and sure enough, they had never voted on it. So they brought it back out on the table, and because there were 2 missing, it just turned into this weird, started out with the $700,000 in streets, and then a couple of the council members who wanted other things added some other things onto it. And because, and then there was this one guy who was kind of, could have gone either way, and he decided to vote with the side of the 2 had added some other things onto the $700,000. So it passed 3-2. Well, the next time they get back together, the two council members who had not been there were upset, number one, that they had gone so far as to actually take action on something without any input, and they took another vote and it failed. So.
Yeah, well, okay, looking at it as an outsider, the council members weren't there.
Right, yeah.
So if they're not there, I mean, it's kind of like if you don't vote, don't complain. Well, they weren't there.
Exactly, and I think one of the things that they felt was that there was an understanding among the group that they would not take that important vote when they weren't present.
Okay.
I think they felt like it had been done, not necessarily behind their backs, but certainly without their input, and they didn't think that was going to happen. And you're right, though, absolutely. If somebody's gone, I guess you have to take your chances, but the point is that they had another shot at it, and they got their way anyway. All
right. Well, let's go to some of the comments, because the people did weigh in, and this is just a great thing about My Edmonds News. Here's a comment from Daryl Hogue, I think.
That's right.
It says, most people say we need to fix the roads, so using logic of no money for anything until compensation is cut approach, when will we begin to fix the roads? We have just under 270 employees. What number of people need to be cut, or how much of a reduction in compensation will it take to save the $1.5 million we need for roads? We've not spent money on roads since 2008, and the risks are real. This really gets to the priorities questions. And I mean, you know, he makes great points. How many people do you cut to fix the roads?
Right, that's right.
Is that where the people are?
In the roads?
Well, in the city of Edmonds, are they say you cut this number of people so we can fix roads? Is that what they're saying?
Well, I don't necessarily think that they are thinking of cutting people, but things like benefits or furlough days, although some employees did do that a couple years ago. Here's what's happening. Citizens are saying, look, we're looking at the news around our area, we're looking at our news around the state, and we see that people are really suffering some pain with public employees. Public employees are being cut, they're taking days off, they're taking reductions, they're reducing their benefits, and they're saying, okay, City of Edmonds, why aren't you saying that with your employees? Why aren't you asking them to do that? And I think that's what people are feeling. It's like, we're okay with looking at a levy if you've really gone in and taken a hard look at the other expenses first. And they don't feel like they've done it.
And then Joe Morgan says, the recent survey shows 78% of us think it's important that the City Council find a levy package that they can all support and not take opposite sides against each other. Isn't there pretty much unanimous support for money for street maintenance? Please act like adults and stop sniping at each other. Otherwise, there's no real chance of passing any levy. I don't know this gentleman, but I have used exactly those words with regard to Congress. I'm tired of them sniping at each other too, and I just want them to do what I believe their jobs are, which is to represent us.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how that's reflected in the vote, both of the levy, if there is one, and the council members themselves, because there has been a lot of sniping. There's been some fairly poor behavior.
So especially at a local level where the people are right there in the face of the legislators, the council members, is there a way for sniping not to take place?
You know, I had an interesting conversation today with a gentleman who is thinking about running for mayor against the incumbent, and he hasn't announced yet, so I can't share his name. Sure. But he told me that, and he is somebody who has been in public office in the City of Edmonds in the past, and he told me that his experience when he was involved before was that it's absolutely possible, because we talked exactly about that, and people can be civil with each other if they're willing to look at it as a situation where they have to, doesn't mean you can't have debate, but you need to be civil and you need to think of it as a policy decision, not politics. And he said that's the thing that is not happening. He said it's turned into a political battle as opposed to people setting policy.
We're going to take a very short break. We are very fortunate right here on Community Blog TV to have Teresa Wippel with us, who is the editor and publisher of My Edmonds News. My Edmonds News is, I have found myself, is a great place to learn what's going on in Edmonds, to learn things that are going on in Edmonds that you're going to want. And right there on the screen right now, you can see a picture of something that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But the main thing is go to MyEdmondsNews.com, and you are going to learn a lot, and be sure and participate. Okay, so Ed in the booth, we got to go back just a little bit because I want to go to Ed Peterson's comments. Don Hall's comments. Sorry, Don Hall. Don Hall, in talking about this levy issue, said there's no doubt that we need a levy for street overlays, and it would have a good chance to pass if fully supported by council, but it doesn't fix the general fund shortfall, as there's no money in the general fund for street overlays. I think Councilman Plunkett's comments were quite appropriate as to how do you budget correctly if you don't know what 54% of your budget is going to be. Is it that much? 54% of the budget is unknown?
Well, 54% of the budget is labor costs, is my understanding. So what?
That's not unusual, though.
No. So, but he very much is of the belief that you need to get the labor negotiations finished first, see what you end up with in terms of a compensation package and everything else before you start talking about how else you're going to fund, what's left over. Okay. So that's really, and that has been his position. And there, you probably noticed that there's some people who came on and said, I don't appreciate your kind of anti-union comments because he came across definitely that way. And so you've got people all over the map on that.
Boy, you sure do.
That's his thing.
Now let's go to Ed Peterson's comments. Let's go to the first one. This was great because he was giving you some props, and that's for sure. He says, I'm equally amazed, after he says he's amazed at what Teresa Wippel does. He says, I'm equally amazed at how much the discussion centers around how and why increasing taxes, or not, addresses the financing model for any of our city costs. Could it be possible the municipality financing model in place for decades could be outdated? And then he says this. Let's go to the next click. It sure would be refreshing to see some of the wonderful creativity the city has as residents put forth ideas that permanently change how we finance our truly required city services. Is he right? Or is it time for municipalities all across the country to look at how they finance things?
Well, I think that's something that, it almost seems like a no-brainer in some ways, right? Because clearly everybody's having that problem now.
Yep, life's different.
Life is different. The economy's different, and I think there were some comments that were made after Ed's that basically said, yes, there are some things that we're talking about. Public-private partnerships is something that a lot of folks have kind of thrown out there. I know there's been resistance to that just because then you talk about, well, can those private entities kind of take over the public ones, and are there some downsides to that? But I think the truth is the model as it is not working well for anybody. And so there needs to be, it's like we're waiting for the economy to get better so we can go back to business as usual, but I'm not sure that's the answer anymore.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I got to go to these last two comments because I just thought they were great. We're going back to Joe Morgan, and he writes it out in the public. He says, to Councilmember Wilson, it was just unbelievable that you would accuse others on the council being untrustworthy 1 week after trying to sneak in a levy proposal that you had to have known would never pass if the full council were present. And then, and here's the amazing thing again to me, the council member responds. DJ Wilson, Joe, stating I had a lack of trust in my colleagues was not my finest moment. I regret saying it. It came in a moment of frustration, and I will apologize to my colleagues at our next meeting. I actually liked that comment.
Yeah, DJ definitely is, he never hesitates when he thinks, when somebody calls him out on it, he will admit he's wrong. I admire that about him. But he was definitely irritated in a very major, clear way. And I was kind of surprised that he said what he said, but he admitted it and apologized, so I think that's good.
Okay, let's go to something that's very exciting for the city of Edmonds. Are we going to it? They have broken ground for the new Dick's.
Oh, yes.
Oh, this is fantastic. Let's go to the next click because here it is. That's not there yet, but that is coming soon to Edmonds. And I found this really interesting. Dick's reveals the Facebook winners who are going to help break ground in Edmonds. And there were some fantastic comments. But one comment, particularly on MyEdmondsNews, struck me. It says, from Kenneth Ronning, it says, Dick's is the absolute best. I remember being in Norway in 1993 and couldn't wait to get home for a deluxe, or 5. Got to go to Dick's, and whenever I'm in Seattle, I won't leave Seattle without going to Dick's. Thank God we're finally getting one up north.
I know.
This has been pretty exciting for the people there.
It has been, I have to say, of all the issues, and you think, aren't there more important things? But the truth is that people just love, it shows how Dick's has really touched people's lives. I mean, it sounds silly for a drive-in, but people just love the fact they're local, they've been around a long time, and frankly, I think all of their high school memories of, even the mayor was talking about how, with his buddies, he went to Edmonds High School, but there wasn't a Dick's nearby, so they used to drive to Holman Road in Seattle because it was the closest one, and they would do that after a game. And that was one of the reasons why Dick's located where they're going to be at. It is literally 2 minutes away from the stadium at Edmonds Woodway High School where the football games are played. So I'm sure they're thinking they're going to get all that traffic coming through from the games.
I think they're right.
Yeah.
We're going to be skipping over to something about construction because the construction industry has been hit as hard as any, if not harder than any other industry. And there in Edmonds, the local construction firms help Edmonds residents through the Ramp-a-thon event. What is that?
Rampathon is actually a volunteer activity that it's through the Master Builders Association of Seattle-King County, and they, it's not just in our area, they do it I think across the region, but local construction companies volunteer their time and materials for the day to pick out a project that involves building a wheelchair ramp for somebody who's deserving and needs it and usually has financial trouble. And it's great because the two people they chose in Edmonds were folks who really had either a ramp that did not work for them or one that was falling apart, and it was wonderful to see. And the companies both told me, you know, these are tough times for a lot of firms, and some of the participation from companies is not as high as it used to be just because they can't afford to donate, but very heartwarming.
Two in particular, was it Shermack, is that how you say it?
Shermack.
Shermack Construction and Irons Brothers. Gotta call them out for, you know, for doing good work. And then there were some donations from the Home Depot Foundation, Greenwood Concrete, Stanwood Ready Mix, and probably some others, but those were the ones who were in the article. And I also want to say this, a great big thanks to Ed. He is by himself in the booth, and he's doing the job of 3 people. So Ed, thank you very much, because I needed to set him up because I need to skip around. So
great.
Actually, we're going to go to the next one. I continually like this guy, Edmonds Kind of Dad. By David Kaufman, My Mother's Day Tradition. I love this column. I guess you get lots of people talking to you about different columns, but I gotta believe that people talk about David Kaufman's columns as much as any. Yeah,
it seems to be very popular, and you know, he's just got a very sensitive way of talking about his role as a dad, as a husband. This one was actually about Mother's Day and how he makes it a tradition to give his wife a day to herself away from the twin boys they have. But you know, the focus of this article is, you know, actually it's a present to me because I get a chance to spend the day with my boys, and it's really heartwarming to me to read his stuff.
Yeah, he's got a couple of pictures of his boys, and then he says it was officially Mother's Day and supposed to be a present for Renee, but I actually consider days spent like that with the twins a gift to myself as well. Okay, you've got a new columnist. He's a veterinarian, Dr. David Gross.
Yep.
And very, very cool column because it was about, you know, dogs, and as white as my dog eat grass. And as I was reading along, I came to this statement. After a kill, carnivores typically eat the internal organs, including the digestive tract, first. This means they are ingesting partially digested plant material. Many people, including myself, believe eating grass is an attempt by the dog to respond to this ancient instinct. You know, I've been reading newspapers for a long time, and newspapers and news sources. I've never seen that in a news column before.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of surprised by that, and I think I was sharing with you earlier when he and I were talking about subjects to address. We had a whole list of topics, and he said, well, some of them are just not really suitable for a family website, so I won't include them. And I read what he wrote, and I thought, and this is? I mean, it's not that it's not suitable, but it is a little, some people might find it a little queasy to read about.
Well, you know, it was educational to me, and I appreciated it. It's just that I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. So, you know, whenever my daughter, my 8-year-old, wants a dog, I'm going to read this to her.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and my dog does eat grass, and so that was actually one of the reasons why I brought it up, because I was very curious as to the reason. Hey,
something cool is going on. Artfully Edmonds. Denise Cole launches the Northwest Glow, her first show since opening the Cole Gallery. And that's Denise Cole, and then you got sunbathing up there. It's just great. Just great. So is there a strong art scene in Edmonds?
Oh, huge art scene. My gosh, we have an art walk once a month on Thursdays, tons of galleries now. We have the Edmonds Center for the Arts, where they have name performers who come in every few weeks. Just a tremendous art scene. You know, our whole area, the jazz programs at the high schools, it's just very much a visible, vibrant community there.
So is this part of the date night with Edmonds as well? Because that's on the website too. We don't have anything specific there, but you know, it's one thing to go out on a date to a specific place, but then that's just one place that you're going to go, right?
Right. Yeah, there's really so many different things you can combine to do in Edmonds. Whether we have a great small movie theater there that's like the old style single screen, and very reasonably priced, and they show first run movies, so you could go to a movie, you can go check out the Edmonds Center for the Arts website and see who is coming to play. I can't remember now they had Randy Newman there a few months ago. I mean, they really do have some big names. And then we have live theater. We have the Driftwood Players, we have the Furdale Village, Phoenix Theater. I mean, just a ton of opportunities for people to do something if they want to go on a date in Edmonds. And
you have Singing with Sting reignites an Edmonds mother's music career. This was very cool. Yeah. And this was, you were talking about a particular day where, is it Katola?
Yeah, Jessica Katola.
Where she was at the Gorge. And she was at the Gorge. Sting and the Police were preparing for their pre-concert sound check. Katola was there with co-workers from Unitas, a nonprofit organization that was the tour's sponsored charity. Sting invited members of the group to step up to the microphone and sing, and Katola jumped at the chance. Clearly impressed by Katola's soulful voice, Sting asked her to sing with him during that night's performance, calling her his discovery. So how's she doing? Oh,
well, she's doing well. I love that story for so many reasons. I love it because she had been singing on and off for her, life, but then, got married, had, I think she has 3 or 4 children, got busy with her life, and then when she went to the Sting concert, it reignited this passion in her to pursue it. And the fact that she actually sung on the stage with Sting, if you watch the video, it's a cell phone video clearly that people took of her, but you could still hear her voice, see them singing together, and it's become a YouTube sensation. I mean, it's got lots of hits, and then and she actually was the Marty Reamer show on the Mountain radio station had her on to talk about this experience, and she did some singing for them too. So she's definitely making her way to try to get back into the music scene and make a career of it, and I wish her well. I hope she does.
I suspect we'll probably be reading more about her in My Edmonds News, won't we?
Yes, yes, we'll keep following her career for sure.
All right, we only have, maybe a minute left, and we have lots of show, but what instead I want to talk about now is the fact that the weather is so great, says summer's on the way. How does My Edmonds News change during the summer?
Edmonds is such a busy place in the summertime. We have a variety of fairs and festivals, and also, it's the beach, so there is a lot of photography that goes on out there. I had some great photos today on the site from a guy who was there at extreme tide yesterday with everything was totally out. All the sea creatures are photographable, and there's lots of interesting things that go on. We have a dog beach where people can bring their dogs. We have a 4th of July festival with fireworks, which a lot of the cities have cut back on their fireworks, but the Edmonds Chamber sponsors that. We have the Taste of Edmonds, which a lot of people know about, which is the big food festival. A car show in September, early September. We have the Waterfront Festival on Memorial Day, or the weekend after Memorial Day weekend, which is a big deal.
Wow.
There's just a ton of stuff that you can do in Edmonds all summer. And,
in addition to wondering whether or not you're going to have a levy on the ballot.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the tourist side, and we do get a lot of that in the summertime. It's a beautiful place to go walk around.
We're going to let that be the last word. This has been Teresa Wippel with My Edmonds News right here on Community Blog TV. Again, MyEdmondsNews.com. Strongly recommend for you to go to it. Even if you don't live in Edmonds, you might want to go visit there. You might want to go to a restaurant there, or to the theater, or lots of other things to do in Edmonds. Wow. And we'll see you right here next week on Community Blog TV. Take care.